might be important.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair. With regards to item D, the Standards Committee minutes relating to 25th of June, that does require a council at least to approve that resolution or those minutes and then convert to the council. The reason being is that the proposal includes a structure of the committee, the panels of the Standards Committee, to not be politically balanced. And in those circumstances, council can resolve to have subcommittees or a committee which is not politically balanced. However, it does require an NEMCOM vote of council, which basically means that there can't be a dissenting vote in relation to a committee which is not politically balanced. And in these circumstances, council is required to formally vote in relation to that particular minutes item.
Okay. So we'll do that then, shall we? Let's see. Employment Committee, minute 10, and subcommittee. Sorry. I'm just testing to make sure you're all awake. Minute 2, new standards regime. Is that agreed? We'll have a vote first. Those in favour of that minute? Okay. Okay. And those against? Okay, and one abstention. Those in lost.
We have to do the same as the other ones.
Oh, that's a loss, isn't it? What's wrong with that?
Mr. Mayor,
Well, that's what I asked.
there's one abstention.
Sergeant, now you'd like to say something else to us. What is it?
Chair, just to go back, if I may, to item C, which also requires an NEMCOM vote. It relates to the Employment and Employment Subcommittee, which again is not a politically balanced committee, and therefore the NEMCOM vote is required in relation to that subcommittee of the Employment and Employment Committee.
Okay. So all those in favour? Are you counting? Okay. All of those against?
to outline to Council the makeup of the improvement board and its role in supporting us as an authority to develop open, transparent decision-making processes fit for purpose and which have the necessary rigour to ensure that the public of Wirral have confidence that we as a council make decisions in their best interests and that such decisions are robust and can stand the test of public scrutiny. The improvement board is made up of the three party leaders of Wirral, a certain chief executive officer of an outstanding North West authority, now known to us, the district auditor, the chief executive of the North West Employers Organisation, senior officers of the LGA, and LGA member peers for each of the three political groups. Anna Fanowski, our own acting chief executive and interim senior management advisor, and the board has an independent chair who is herself a former chief executive officer. The board has wide-ranging expertise and knowledge in terms of good practice and how a good council looks and operates. The improvement board has been meeting for the past 6 months, and the focus of their work has been on identifying and discussing council corporate governance issues. From these early discussions, 5 key and clear priorities have been identified. They are leadership, political and managerial, corporate governance and decision making, the corporate plan, budget and financial stability, and critical service areas, safeguarding and developing the economy. The improvement plan, based on these priority themes, will be aligned with our corporate plan and will form the blueprint for taking forward change. The plan has been developed by the Council's executive team over a number of dedicated planning sessions and has taken feedback from the improvement board and the LGA. The plan has also been informed by the area work of the Corporate Governance Improvement Programme. You will remember under the 10 key land inquiries which had cross-member key involvement and working, and the outcomes of which have formed the basis for the 5 priority themes identified by the Improvement Board. The improvement plan will be presented to the Improvement Board this coming Friday, and subject to agreement, work will begin on management and delivery immediately, with clearly defined targets with risk and quality assurance built into the framework, with a dedicated programme lead officer from the executive team, who is Fiona Johnson. As we have set the direction of travel in terms of our plan, the work of the board going forward now into the next 6 months will be to monitor progress and achievement and to continue to support us, and will help us to account for the delivery of the improvement plan. As elected members, Mr Mayor, we all have a vital role to play in ensuring that we develop a shared vision of what this authority will look like in the next few years. Members who attended the training session with the Improvement Board last week, and there were many others there, were, I believe, energised by the prospect of change, of us being prepared to move forward together to ensure that the residents of Wirral receive excellent services in all areas of our work from an excellent council. There will be an all-member session in September when we come together to discuss our vision for our borough. There are many people, Mr Mayor, to
you, Madam Mayor.
Is that Wirral Road, you know?
So the motion asks us to note the progress that's been made in developing an improvement plan, which I'm happy to do. It's pretty easy. It's an easy task for us in the chamber to note progress. What we need, obviously, and what we're waiting for is a final result, a final action plan. I'll hear what was said about that. I just want to check my understanding. The ethos of what's been discussed at the improvement board is currently reflected in the corporate plan, because only a few moments ago I think we adopted the corporate plan, didn't we? Am I right in thinking then that that ethos is reflected in the corporate plan, and in particular the section of the corporate plan that deals with your council? Is that yeah, thank you. So I just wanted to check that understanding. The second part of the motion asks us to give support to delivering the priorities agreed to achieving excellence and outstanding services, which again I'm more than happy to do, because I think I think that forms part of the goals that are reflected in the corporate plan, which we adopted only a few moments ago. Definitely talked about being held to account, and at the end of the day that's the job of opposition, and for one reason or another I find myself on the opposition pensions. It's also the job of scrutiny clearly to hold the executive to account and control group to account, and to ensure consistency. So having got the niceness out of the way, Mr. Mayor, let me just make a few points. It says in the corporate plan that this year we will focus on developing a culture of openness rather than secrecy. If this is the case, then why are the control group seeking to cut as the motion made for legal consensus on exactly this very subject? That's on page 30. Staying on page 30, it also talks about good understanding of citizens and customers' views through consultation on participation. I'm not sure if the way that is missing from the sentence or the sentence is incomplete. Nevertheless, if this is a focus for the year, why are the control group ripping apart the motion Councillor Johnson here and myself are pushing forward, dealing with how decisions are being made that affect people's library services? Turning to page 31, the plan wants to ensure there's clear organisational focus on critical areas such as safeguarding. Great. But why is our motion on that very subject being involved by amendments? I could go on, and some of these issues will be subject to further debate later tonight. What I want to ensure is that those words in the corporate plan are not just there as a piece of paper designed to satisfy a tick box exercise. We need to ensure the controlling group are sticking by it. If so, then they need to show consistency and to be more careful before typing up amendments to motions that would deliver the priorities listed more effectively if they were impeded by Labour's amendments. If Labour is really genuinely committed to the words in their first motion, they should withdraw their amendment on freedom of information. They should also withdraw their amendments on libraries.
You're going to propose 2 minutes for the council?
They should also withdraw their amendment on libraries as it relates to real, meaningful engagement and participation, rather than engagement only on Labour's terms. We can't possibly be asked to believe that the controlling group are truly committed to the path of improvement while they put forward amendments like this. They need to show consistency. What they say in the corporate plan needs to be reflected. These aren't two different items on the agenda of this council. There needs to be a common theme running through it. Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to support the motion because I agree with the contents of the motion. Unfortunately, can the same be said of the library?
You may find out. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Harding.
I won't say very much, but first of all, I listened very carefully to my colleague, and I can't speak rather like towards the promised land at the moment, I remember from my studies at school. But I do think that there are issues about our communication with everybody on this council, and I do think that, you know, people, we are adults, most of us, well, most of you are anyway, and, you know, you do need to tell your representatives or any of us what exactly we should do about it, because I recognise that communication has to be improved between the improvement board and members of the council, and of course beyond that to the public, and I think that is absolutely vital. And exactly the same comments made, and referring to my colleagues on the training group, we are trying to have an ambitious training programme for members, and again, if we're not getting the communication right, because you're confused about the various messages you're getting, you need to tell us. I can assure you there is no deliberate motivation in this. People are doing their best. We don't always get it right. So please give your views as forthrightly as you wish, and we will try to respond. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other speakers? Councillor Green.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, we'll be supporting this resolution this evening, because we agree with it and support it. And again, I suppose, declare an interest in terms of I'm a member of the improvement board too. My concern for the improvement board is related to some of the earlier items that we've had, which was we tend to be great at drawing up plans, but they tend not to get fully implemented because everyone moves on to something else, and they certainly don't seem to get embedded. Because if they were, we would have the best quality governments in the country. So there is an issue about what we seek to do and whether it's achievable. And sometimes it's better to do fewer things well than a lot of things poorly. And I have made the point previously about the scale and the scope of what it is that's within the improvement plan, and whether that's going to be properly managed, properly project managed with the correct disciplines, and how that is going to be monitored and progressed. Because these things do not happen on their own. You don't have project disciplines and all the rest of it for the sake of it. You do it because that's been shown to be the way you actually get to clearly identify benefits, and you make the project and the changes stick. Again, I would certainly accept the point that Tom's made about communication. Only today we discovered that the notes were sent out, meant to be sent out, following on from each improvement board to let people know what's been going on, haven't actually been being sent out, which I believe is now going to be corrected. And that was an interesting point, but it needs to be improved. The other issue as well is we do need to be clear. I'm just looking at the minute agenda for the next improvement board, and we have the improvement plan, and we've got exempt all over it. And yet, as I understand it quite rightly, the acting chief executive has gone out of his way to try and encourage and involve people as much as possible in that. So we do need to get back to some clear thinking about what should be exempt, what shouldn't be, how much help do we want from other members across the council, how much do we want is going to be kept back and kept secret. There are still lots that we have to do if we are going to achieve the improvements that we all aspire to. There are still a lot of practical things we need to do to make sure that happens.
Thank you very much. Have we any other speakers? Councillor Gilchrist. Sorry. Yes. Councillor Gilchrist.
It would be helpful, Mr. Mayor, if when the leader responds, you perhaps bring us up to date with the thinking of the Cabinet on the 10th of July, particularly Cabinet item 4, which dealt with the corporate and business planning consultation process. A very detailed process was set out, much of it mirrors previous years, some of which previous years' processes were criticised. But a lot of what I read of the consultation process mirrors work that's been done in the past, like task forces, but particularly within that, references to producing service reports which detail, I quote, in candid terms exactly what services are being delivered, what these services achieve in terms of outcome and results. And it went on in that report, Mr. Mayor, section 2.6, to talk about survey work which be externally validated to ensure impartiality and
approached in a constructive and maybe consensual way to move us on, to ensure that the many talents that are bound to this authority are delivered into the emerging new structures, mechanisms and vision that has been put together within the improvement plan. Mr Mayor, I do think it's also very heartening that everything is on the table as we seek to transform to a forward-looking authority that is fit for purpose in the long term. In seeking to achieve this, we must bring about, I think, a major attitudinal change within the executive leadership. That means a sea change, Mr Mayor, away from the long-held, as it's been said, Wirral way of doing things. Maintaining the status quo and working in unconnected and uncommunicating interface is not an option anymore. It must move away from a traditional, rather negative approach, which I think is risk-averse, reactive, not proactive, bureaucratic and stifling, as I say, that silo mentality. We also see, do we not, and we've heard from those who have been on the improvement board and who have said to us that departments are not working together, never mind working with us as members. We need to ensure we become the opposite, forward-thinking, streamlined, leaner and meaner, dynamic, bags of innovation, creative, imaginative and visionary. I could go on. Mr Mayor, it also means no duplication of responsibility, but clear and effective intercommunication and close liaison, again, in order to most effectively deliver the Council's priorities. This all seems blindly obvious, but it's things that we've not been doing as a Council for a very long time. On Wednesday, Mr Mayor, we were told that in the last 35 years we have had 5 chief executives all recruited from within. During that time, the Council's executive leadership to date has tended to be people by administrators of various professional backgrounds, safe hands, no risks, etc. And by definition, maintainers of the fabled status quo and generally managers rather than the dynamic leaders which opportunity and need would ideally require. That's not to say that high-quality general management skills, then as now, are not important. Of course they are. But as Howard Bernstein, the Chief Executive of Manchester, working in very close partnership with political leadership over many years, has proved, as others have in major local authority areas, to make real progress needs dynamic leadership fueled by vision, determination, and a clear, set-out destination of where we are going. Get it right first time, find the right person who's got what it takes. The others, directors, heads of services, solicitors, planners, asset managers, finance guys and the rest will work for that visionary leader, not the other way around, as has been the case in the Wirral up until now. We have recruited an interim chief executive in Graham Burgess tonight and agreed that, and rightly, we've made him very welcome and look forward to working with him to pursue our aspirations. So let's get moving for Wirral, become our model as a go-ahead authority that is driving forward, bursting with ideas, with that vibrant leadership that others will want to follow, fit for the challenges ahead and fit for the 21st century. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Should go to second and that. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, clearly rising to support or to second the motion on the improvement plan. Without kind of rehearsing the points that members have made, I do think this is a welcome approach to the way we do business in the Council. The fact that we have got cross-party support in the improvement board, we've agreed the 5 clear priorities that Hannah Blackburn listed. We've got clear focus on where we need to move forward now. And the improvement plan itself, I think we've got a very logical and robust process in moving forward in terms of chief officer and head of service involvement and elected members via cabinet and scrutiny process. I think the 3 kind of areas I would highlight as kind of key challenges that I think we still need to address. One is, I do agree with Jeff, we need to improve communication, key messages from the improvement board. I think one of the messages from the seminar last Wednesday night was that members as a whole don't feel as connected as they should be with the work of the improvement board. get better at making sure that following improvement board meetings, every member of this chamber is clear about the key decisions that that body has made. So I do agree with that. We need to find ways in which all elected members can contribute to the improvement board. You know, I think you said before that we all have a contribution to make, and I detected an enthusiasm on Wednesday night from the well-attended seminar for members to get involved in the nuts and bolts of the improvement plan. So outside the formal scrutiny process, which is absolutely critical, we need to find mechanisms and settings where members can influence and contribute to the work that we're doing on the improvement board going forward. But I think the key challenge above and beyond all of that is, you know, at the end of our 2-year improvement journey, to use the phrase that we keep on using, Tom, you know, how do we really make sure that that improvement is embedded and we can sustain that after all the external help and support goes away? I think that is the key challenge that I think all three party leaders have recognised. In terms of, I mean, you know, I do genuinely think the all-party approach is, I think the all-party approach is refreshing, and I've detected, Stuart, you know, I think a rather negative kind of tone in some of your talks, which I think is a shame. I mean, they are legitimate questions, but you know, we are trying to change the culture of this place, and you know, I don't accept your criticism that we've ripped the guts out of other motions, but we'll debate that in due course. And on Phil Gilchrist's comment, the consultation process is important around the new corporate plan linked to the budget. I haven't got time to go through that in detail. Suffice to say that we kick the process off in September with what I call scrutiny programme boards, which is the core of which is elected members in those scrutiny workshops, supplemented by key people from the business world of business, voluntary community, faith sector. So that will be the first event to kick the process off. But I'm happy to when I've got more time, to sit down with you and take you through the actual details of how we're going to roll that out. But I think it is absolutely important that we have a robust consultation process around all of this, that all members are comfortable with, and again can have an opportunity to contribute. I'm happy to talk to you in more detail about outside this meeting. So in finishing, I'd be happy to second this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Black, would you like to say another word?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few comments in terms of the debate. The improvement plan is ambitious, and I hear what you say about, you know, having too many priorities, but it does have 5 clearly defined themes, and the nomination of a senior officer to coordinate the delivery of the programme and, you know, to control its delivery, and the commitment of the executive team, I hope will ensure that we are able to deliver on the priorities that we've set ourselves. Clearly, communication and training, as has been said, are key, but we are at the beginning, and I'm sure that, you know, and what will happen is a clear plank of the work going forward will be
I believe fundamentally the reference from the documentation around this, people who were drafting the legislation, which was based on greater transparency of public bodies is at the heart of enabling the public to hold politicians and public bodies to account. Where public money is involved, there's a fundamental public interest in being able to see how it's being spent, and demonstrate how valuable money has been achieved, or to highlight inefficiency. Mr. Mayor, I think it is important, and I think in a council like our own, there has been a desire, a hunger from the public to actually find out what's going on, because there has been this feeling that we have not been as open or transparent as we could be and as we should be. In fact, as it says in the resolution, from 241 requests in 2007 to 1,139 in 2011. Now that's either the public are becoming really fascinated, or I think there's a view that the council hasn't been telling everybody everything about what's going on, and it leads to a lack of trust. Again, the public are interested in finding out what goes on in the council. The public do have a genuine wish for the council to succeed and for it to be successful in what it does. People realise that their lives are enhanced greatly when the council is performing well, and they feel when the council is not performing well that there is something wrong, and they want people to accept it. So the public themselves, I'm pleased to say, try and get involved to see what the problem is so they can offer solutions. Now let's remember that the FOI process itself was important in flushing out some of the issues that the council was facing, particularly in adult social services, but in other areas too. And the sad thing about that, again, this leads to more effort. It wasn't the first time there was an FOI request, or even the second time, but people were making 3 or 4 different FOI requests on the same item before they got to some semblance of what was actually going on. I do believe that one of the ways we can start rebuilding trust in the council is to show this approach, the culture, if you will. We talked a lot bit earlier on about some of the practical changes that need to be made, the techniques to make them. But there is this cultural change that as an organisation we have to face, which is about enshrining openness and transparency in everything we do. At the end of the day, we come here to represent the public, and we are therefore accountable. And the public should have, I think we all accept it, a right to know about what we're doing, why we're doing it, or even, in some cases, how we're doing it. So I do think if we're going to start changing the culture, then being open and transparent, as I've mentioned consistently, is something that we could do. And that's one of the reasons why I was so incredibly disappointed that officers, no doubt working, they see on behalf of council policies as they are laid out, are currently attempting to overturn a decision notice from the Information Commissioner's Office. Now, I did take the time to ask how many of these judgments by the Information Commissioner has the council challenged previously, and no one could tell me that they had another experience of that. And I do think it's extraordinary. If we're going to be open and transparent, we go, first of all, it's turned down, then it goes to the processes, it goes to the Information Commissioner. The Information Commissioner sees all the evidence, makes an adjudication, and yet the council still chooses to challenge that adjudication. Again, it strikes me as not being an open and transparent approach. I'm not even altogether sure why we would want to challenge what the Information Commissioner is actually saying in the first place. It doesn't suggest to me that we have that openness and transparency, that belief in freedom of information. so on and so forth. And that needs to be addressed. And the way I've suggested, or the way we're suggesting in this report, is yes, to ask officers to think through and to find best practice. I made that request back in April, and officers are already starting on that approach. My idea was to make us one of the most open and transparent councils in the country, and to look at some of the really good practice that's going on about that. And then to establish a working party in one-on-one, councils that will actually drive this thing forward, so we can actually start it. And then come to make, not implementing it, but to make recommendations to Cabinet on a new approach to FOI requests. So we can demonstrate that we have changed our culture, and we do believe in openness, and we believe in a transparency of information, what we do, when we do it, and how we do it. Mr. Mayor, that's where this resolution comes from. And that's also why I'm a little disappointed with the resolution that's in Phil and Adrian's name. This wasn't a trick resolution. It wasn't trying to cause trouble for anybody. It was actually trying to move something, trying to move this whole approach forward. I feel, and I hope this isn't the case, that the amendment put forward by Councillor Davis and Councillor Jones will prevent and will slow down the improvement we need to make. Now, I'm not going into details about the particular case that has been turned down for the Information Commissioner, but subject to saying, it is highly important, significant, and wraps around something that this council has been doing, and has massive consequences for cost and all the rest of it. So I do hope that we are not turning back the clock, and we talk about openness, we talk about transparency, but when it comes to actually voting on it, comes to moving this thing forward, it's being kicked into one rest. I do hope, Mr. Mayor, that Phil and Adrian will think again, and instead of deleting everything after paragraph 2 and inserting, they can add their 3 comments to make sure we actually move this forward. We have, as I understood it, worked together closely, all parties moving forward. That shouldn't be a one-way street. I think it should be us all working together on what's important to all of us and to the public. And clearly the numbers that we're receiving suggest there's a lack of trust. And this, I believe, will be a key way of moving forward to say that we are an organisation that welcomes the transparency, and the information that comes out of that we then use to learn from.
I actually don't think there's a huge sort of disagreement on this resolution. Point number 1, yes, I think we do need to enshrine a culture of openness, transparency in everything we do. I accept that we need to review the way we deal with FOI requests. It is a matter of concern to me that we have one of the highest levels of FOI requests in the country, and I think we need to look at why that is, and clearly that requires an enormous amount of effort on the part of officers to respond to those FOI requests. I'm more than happy to support the suggestion that we look at best practice elsewhere in the spirit of being more open to good practice in other local authorities, other organisations, and to report back to council excellence as early as possible. So I don't think my amendment is stopping any of that from happening. The bits that we've left out is paragraph of your resolution, Jeff, is paragraph 3 and 5. On paragraph 3, possible. Well, we've included the culture of openness and transparency. The difficulty with FOI requests is, by definition, they're kind of confidential when they come in. We're not allowed to, quite rightly, see the detail of who submitted them. I wasn't aware, but I'll take your word for it about the point you made in item 3. But on item 5, I say I share your concern, and I I didn't know what case you were referring to. I had a briefing with the, I can call you now the acting director of law. And I understand that surgery is reviewing that decision to block the release of information. And I have a very simple view. I think that the presumption should be on favour of disclosure. So on the basis of that, I'm hoping that review will result in that information being released. Although when this was written, I wasn't clear at all what the case was referring to, but I hope that gives you some reassurance. And then finally, the only reason why I've not gone on with your idea of establishing an authority working group is that actually I thought that was up to the scrutiny committee to decide. The piece of work about reviewing good practice would be done by the officers, would go to an early meeting of the Council Ethics and Scrutiny Committee, and then it was up to that committee to decide how they wanted to deal with that. If they wished to set up a working party, fine, but I didn't want to fetter their freedom and their discretion to decide when that comes back how they reacted to it. So that was simply a practical suggestion. I believe if we're going to give responsibility and put faith in and our trust in the scrutiny committees, they should be allowed to decide how they deal with evidence. So that was the reason why I can go along with that. So to sum up, Mr. Mayor, our amendment is not seeking to radically alter the direction of travel that you suggested, Jack. There were just some practical considerations I thought we needed to take account of first before we move forward. But I think we're both trying to get to the same end point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Generations of human beings have recognised since they first climbed out of the trees and were able to speak and communicate ideas that knowledge is power. Those with the most knowledge have always exercised most command and unchallenged control over those who do not have proper access to detailed factual information. The lessons of history shows that generations of tyrannical rulers and tin-pot dictators have manipulated their countrymen and supporters and retained themselves in power by the handy expedient of telling them nothing or applying outrageous spin in the form of propaganda to the information that they actually release. Hitler, Stalin and Chairman Mao would not have survived so long if their countrymen had known what was going on. The other main reason for flawed regimes worldwide withholding information from the public has been to avoid the searchlight being shown on their arrogance, ignorance, incompetence, and often deeply psychotic actions of their balmy rulers. So we come to Wirral, which I hasten to add. Which I hasten to add. Is not, of course, a flawed regime of the type that we've just been talking about, but where the number of freedom of information requests is increasing almost exponentially. One wonders why this is. I hope it's because our public are more interested and aware than they were and really want to know what is going on. The internet and our social networking and media sites give access to so much information, associated information, that these alone can trigger requests for further information. But my fear, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Mayor, is that information requests escalation is also a direct result of the perception that Wirral Council is characterised as some sort of secret service, or certainly has been until recently, that deliberately withholds information so that it cannot be held to account over allegedly flawed procedures and practices. We've learned tonight of the changes that are proposed, which I fully endorse in the first motion that we discussed. But let's be realistic. Up until recently, nothing in Council's recent actions, as reported in the media, has done anything to dispel this damaging perception of alleged operationally systemic secrecy. But hopefully we are all now committed to change. The only way, in my view, to avoid an escalation in freedom of information requests is to genuinely engage in providing information transparently, quickly and accurately, so that FOI requests are rendered virtually unnecessary or certainly limited in their requirements. To this end, I believe Council should recognise the default principle that all information must be put in the public domain as soon as possible, unless there is a very, very good reason not to do so. The only reasons, in my view, for withholding exempt information or declaring information as exempt must be either on the ground of specific financial or commercial confidentiality, or for reasons that genuinely might compromise due legal process. No other reason for withholding information is valid, quite frankly. And also, freedom requests must not be mischievously massaged into falling into one of these categories for flawed ulterior motives that clearly do not justify them. So, Mr. Mayor, to sum up, I endorse the motion that gaining knowledge of best practice from other local authorities is the way forward, without reinventing the wheel ourselves. And that would, in my view, be in the Council's best interest. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've already commented in the last debate on my sort of juxtaposition of the terms of the corporate plan and the effects of those amendments. And I think the word that I use with regard to the freedom of information motion that was down the effect of those amendments that it tore the guts out. I think Councillor James asked me to justify that, which I'll now attempt to do by starting at the beginning. So first of all, the amendment seeks to leave paragraph 3 entirely. And I don't know why. I don't know what it is about Martin Morton's very name that seems to send the Labour Party into the After Party. We need to have acknowledgement of the role that was played by his freedom of information request that started the process that broke open the can of worms on how Wirral is run. And you know, when you vote a few minutes time to change, to take out that paragraph, it will not change the practice. In paragraph 4, they remove the reference to rebuilding public confidence and building a culture of openness. There is a link, I would suggest, controlling between rebuilding public confidence and a culture of openness. Paragraph 5, which again the Labour seek to delete in its entirety. I listened carefully to what Councillor Davis said in his response to that, and I took a degree of heart, because I personally think it's a disgrace when an elected member can't get the information that he's requested. And I take it on face value. I'm sure it's true that when he read, on Councillor Davis, the Council read the motion, he may not have been sure about the specific request that the leader of the Conservative group was making and the issue that it covered. Now that he is aware of that, perhaps he will use his strong leader patch. Because what's the point of being a strong leader if you can't exercise some strong leadership on it? Because it's clear from his remarks that the actions of the officers in appealing the decision of the Information Commissioner does not, in fact, have the blessing of the administration. Now, if I'm wrong in that, then the administration should get up and say that in fact officers are acting within their blessing and then are not on a, if you like, a front of their own. Mr. Davis said he wasn't sure what it was about, but he will remember it being referred to on a number of occasions, and the reason that the council officers didn't want to reveal the information is because it would chill the council to its core. That was the evidence put forward by officers. Mr. Mayor, given that we're already in the Arctic conditions, I'm not sure if your extra degrees of chilling will matter that much. I'm interested in a number of issues, but I did take heart from what the Leader of the Council said, so I'm not going to press him in public to answer a number of questions. How much is it costing to appeal these things? I'll just ask him to go back, consider the full and open offer that's been made by the Leader of the research group that was supposed last time full move, but offer was made to another group. Indeed, to effectively amalgamate, or at least look at where the common ground does exist, leaving some Mark request as I exercise some gratitude there, and express as a full council our disappointment that the appeal decision is being, that the decision of the Information Commissioner is being considered. Except what's said about the scrutiny committee should have its own. I'm sure, you know, in part of a give and take, Jeff would be happy not to, I don't want to speak for him, but would probably be happy not to be particularly ready to a working group. But what Council Elders, and I'll conclude this, Mr. Mayor, what Council Elders said was actually quite true. The key point is that we should be looking to reduce the number of and the amount of information requests that we receive. The only way is to ensure that that information is already easily available. Mr. Mayor, we are where we are because of a culture of secrecy and bullying. The Council has sought to keep a lid on things in the past. Please, Bill, let's not have more of the same.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some of you will remember that in recent years there was a scheme to build a hotel in Wirral on the car park and to rejuvenate the sailing school. And there was controversy over this suggestion, and I was heavily involved with it. I'm not going to get into the arguments as to whether it was right or wrong, that's not the point I'm making tonight. But I sat down with the appropriate officer and asked if I could have all the documents relating and all the reports that have been made in relation to the scheme given to me, because we were in disagreement as to what were confidential matters or not, and could he mark the passages that were confidential. He did so. When I got it back, I thought I'd landed in a totalitarian state when I saw what was being said. And I decided to test it. You will recall, I'm sure some of you, that if you go down D Lane, you've got the car park at the end, and you've got the Morrison's car park. And the Morrison's car park was sold in 1992-3 to the store that preceded Morrison's. And I asked if he could let me know what it was sold for. He told me he couldn't do that because it was exempt. So I then pointed out that that the then chairman of the Legislative Committee, which was Councillor Eric Smith from Leesa, had attended at my request a public meeting attended by 300 people in West Kirby who were all upset by the decision to sell that top land, where the amount of money, £2.3 million, was public knowledge and was discussed at the meeting, and indeed, dear O'Day promised after a large protest from the audience that he would see that a substantial part of that would be spent in the West Kirby area. I have to say that on that point, the money seemed to disappear into the ether, and that never happened. What this demonstrates to me, it is a culture, if you like, where the officers look for reasons not to give information rather than to give it wherever possible. That's what's got to change in this authority, and the sooner the better. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't realise I might have so quickly. Mr. Mayor, I'm sure that members will probably know that the Act, if I remember, became law in 2005, and that was following a promise made by Labour during the 1997 general election. And its purpose, of course, was to ensure greater transparency than the UK had experienced under governments before it. So, like the National Health Service, this is another bit of legislation which is very much our baby and something that we are particularly proud of and fond of. But Mr. Mayor, this evening's debate, the proposition that's been put by Jeff and Leslie, really does rather fail to escape from the cultural tradition of tribalism that Councillor Hamilton so vehemently tried to say we want to get away from. Our amendment, Mr. Mayor, does nothing. It removes nothing of substance from what Councillor Green and Berry seek in their motion. It retains everything of value. It seeks only to sanitize it from the pettiness of party political posturing it contains, in words that are crafted to continue making task deficiencies that this majority Labour Council is now in a position to remedy. They would be, we are now in a position, because it is not any longer a common council, to get away from that sort of thing, because there will at least, for the first time in decades, be some positive direction, and we should be able to escape from tribalism of the past. Mr. Mayor, I wasn't at all sure what they were getting at in their veiled reference in Article 5 of their motion, but it did occur to me that perhaps they were in some way trying to protect me. My interest anyway, because perhaps they had by some alchemic leak discovered that I placed a freedom of information request myself for disclosures, and it had remained undischarged several weeks beyond the date for statutory disclosure. I could, of course, have made some political capital out of that in the way that the Conservative just did, but in the event, I accepted the reasons given me by our officers. Although I thought, or I believed I had every right to written disclosure of information, I accepted an alternative solution. But perhaps, Mr. Mayor, they were looking at some other request. Now, I most certainly accept that for the Council to be bombarded with information requests, some of which might be quite frivolous, it's just not good policy, it's not good business, it's not the way to build up the Council. And indeed, I was once subject to such a request myself when I was mayor. No prizes for guessing which side of the chamber that came from, but a request went in to discuss all things, how much money I had spent on clothes in charge of the council, how much money the mayor had spent on clothes in charge of the council. And the only reason I know about it is when the local party told me about it because they thought it was so disgusting. Incidentally, I'd spent nothing, although I did buy a suit from Oliver Smith. I recommend that to anybody. I'm not wearing it tonight. But just what is the use is to absolutely applaud the general principle, of course, of ensuring that our council discovers best practice in a range of other organisations and then deals with it through the openness of the council's proper scrutiny arrangements. Now, I don't accept Jeff's proposal to establish a separate ad hoc arrangement, allegedly in pursuit of transparency, but more likely to politicise the process that they introduced in the first place, precisely to introduce transparency. But I do, Mr. Mayor, rather sympathise with Jeff's plight. After all, when the electorate has given his party such a drubbing, he may well feel that he needs to burrow deep the ways to overcome the ordinary constitutional arrangements that are no longer to his advantage. But frankly, the electorate has spoken, and transparency should transcend precisely the kind of now political advantage that this motion is seeking us to drag us back to. In any case, we shouldn't preempt whatever arrangements the Scrutiny Committee might consider. And for all these reasons, Mr. Mayor, I urge members of all three political parties to forget this varsity debate style of tribalism that Jeff has introduced in pursuit of party advantage. That is what you're doing. And let the Council's excellent Scrutiny Committee work properly with full party support, all party support, and free of the sort of, dare I say, almost whip-like approach that we experienced in the past. Come on, let's let the Council do its job properly, let the Scrutiny Committees work, and don't try to find crafty ways to dodge it.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, first of all, just a couple of because I firmly believe when you've got a majority on the council, it's quite easy to say how you're going to embrace all working together. And I take Phil's word for it, I have to say, perhaps rather than the comments made from Councillor Jones. But while there's no elections on, while you've got full control, yes, of course, you know, why wouldn't you work with us? But unfortunately, you didn't work with us when you were in a minority. But nevertheless, we've moved on from there, and I'm prepared to move on. But Mr Mayor, personally, I do feel that when a council has a disproportionate amount of freedom requests made, then it really should be yet another further example that something is not only that residents are concerned, but from my point of view, I think it shows that people really have a clear indicator that the council has much to do to improve because it's acting in a secretive manner. So quite clearly, Mr Mayor, this council needs some courageous decisions to be taken and some courageous actions. And we haven't got time to wait around. We need those courageous actions and we need them now. And working all together, Phil, you know, we're putting quite a lot of trust in you, and I'm quite happy to do that because I've known you, I think, for 21 years when we first joined the council together. And I've always had respect for you and your deputy leader. And I think we can work with you perhaps far more easily than we've been able to work in the past. But if you also assume that the current set of requests are to carry on as they do, then probably by year end we'll have received more than 1,500 requests. That not only gives concern for the financial impact that it will have on this council, but it also gives me great concern about the office of time that will take to process those requests. So that alone really is a cause for concern, and clearly it shows that in the past this council has worked behind closed doors. And the number of freedom of information requests, again, seems to point to the fact that this council in the past has been shrouded in secrecy. And instead of looking outward and letting people express themselves, let them float good ideas without fear that they're going to be either stepped upon, put down, or they'll be bullied by colleagues or senior management, then we should be looking outward and taking people at their word. So that style of council certainly is a recipe for disaster, Mr Mayor, and clearly it's one that I wouldn't want to be part of and wouldn't want to see it carry on. And we've always believed on this side of the chamber about openness and transparency. After all, it was ourselves, and if we're going to be tribalistic, Councillor Jones, it was ourselves and the Conservative-led Conservative government, led government, who actually decided that we here on Wirral would publish all contracts over £500. And, you know, how freeing was that? So openness and transparency should be clearly at the heart of all we do. But we should have seen the warning signs, and personally, I did see the warning signs a couple of years back, and I know I've mentioned it before in this council chamber, but when Sue Charteris published her draft report on the libraries investigation, Councillor Green, the then leader of the largest party on the council, yet not the leader of the council, was away. I asked could I see it in his absence, and I was told by officers that no, I couldn't. Now that personally to me, I mean anybody that knows me knows that forgiving and forgetting doesn't come very easy to me, and I can forgive it, but forgetting those sort of actions just shows how those remarks, you know, held in my mind really showed that this council really was closing in on itself and we were acting secretly. And again, as other members have alluded to, if the Information Commissioner's Officer grant access, then who are the officers of this council to deny a member of the council those details? I think that is pretty appalling to say the least. And all we are trying to do as locally elected people is to truly have the information so that we can represent those people who elect us to be here. So examples of this sort of behaviour really do go to erode the trust that we have between members and officers. And clearly, Mr Mayor, none of us want to see that carry on. So, Phil, I say to you, with the support of the other two parties on this council, we are willing to back you. And as we said, I think Councillor McLaughlin mentioned it, somebody said at our training session last Wednesday that the status quo wasn't an option. How very true that is really. So the status quo here isn't an option. So it really cannot be too much to hope, Mr Mayor, that we now all start to work together, make this
suggest that this resolution was in any way tribal, or there's this sort of, I don't know, conservative mold working within the Information Commissioner's office who's, go around granting permission for people to find out what's going on, is clearly nonsense. What we're pointing out, what I was highlighting there is that even the Information Commissioner, even when it's already been refused by council officers, goes to and the Information Commissioner says, yes, of course this information should be available. The council still appeals against the Information Commissioner when they made that decision. Now, how can that suggest we have a culture of openness and transparency? I mean, Councillor Hale put his finger on one where the reflex in this council is to keep it secret, to hide it. And I'm afraid, I am afraid that the point that was made by Adrian's approach to this just seems to be, well, because a Conservative council is proposing this, there is some dark, deep tribal secret behind it, which I think says probably more about Adrian than it does about us for putting this particular resolution forward. I could certainly agree with Phil in terms of, we're not trying to control anything, we just want the scrutiny committees to do it, and the scrutiny committee to go. Of course, the next meeting of the scrutiny committee is the 1st of October. So why would we want to wait that long in order to start that piece of work to drive us forward? And to be fair, Phil, you know yourself that in some cases you need members to drive some of this stuff along. And if there's an enthusiasm and willingness, and if we actually do have an all-party consensus around this, as you suggested, then why don't we just agree to get on with it? We can go back to the scrutiny committee if they want. Why wait 3 months for us to start this rather important piece of work? So, Mr. Mayor, I think this is, it's always, of course, desirable for administrations to try and keep information themselves, because they think any information that comes out is made for criticism, and they try and do some sort of political calculus. That, to be fair, is the problem we as a council have got ourselves into for the past 5, 10 years, in terms of any criticism, back down hatches, back away. Don't tell people what's going on, try and feed people good news stories if you can find any, but certainly don't try and deal with the issues or give people information. That's why we haven't been a learning organisation, because nobody has had the facts to which to learn. And what we have to become is an organisation that is open, that is transparent. We all talk about wanting to openly face our problems, and I believe Phil and Anne absolutely do want to do that, and are moving us in the right direction. But please, let's not just slow things down because 1 or 2 members of the cabinet think this is some sort of trick. It is clearly not a trick. It is something that will help us become a better organisation and will give us more lessons from which to learn. And I think that's different, and it's also, frankly, something that you, Phil, can show to the public that demonstrates that we are different from the way we were before. And that's why we're getting so many FOIs, and it is a chance to separate ourselves, uncouple ourselves from the past, and do something new and innovative, and make it clear that there's a commitment behind it going forward. And that's why I do hope that
as amended.
Okay, I'm just going to consult on this one. Thank you for your advice. Councillor Green, I think the advice now is that we have to take another vote. Thanks, Councillor. So those in favour of Councillor Green's... Councillor Green's motion as amended. Those in favour